When we said that OB is a systematic discipline, what we essentially realized was that the discipline has a body of research, systematic studies, erudite insights, and of course, professional and academic relevance. It attempts to take stock of behavior in a fairly organized manner. It also establishes contextual validity of data to ensure that it is scientific and of high value. OB is an applied behavioral science and freely partakes of other behavioral disciplines. Before we look into the different contributing disciplines to OB, let us walk down the pages of History of Management and look at some interesting and tremendously significant studies. At the turn of the 20th century, significant work happened, which laid strong foundations for the field of management. And practices of management can be traced back to the start of human civilization. But emergence of management as an organized body of knowledge and systematic discipline has essentially happened with some significant work done during the earlier part of the 20th century. To start with, Henry Fayol, a French engineer, gave his now famous 14 principles of management. He observed that a successful manager should be able to handle his people and should possess enough courage and energy. Another major contribution was from Frederick W. Taylor, better known as the father of scientific management. Taylor contributed significantly through his time and motion studies. His views regarding the principle of scientific decision-making techniques such as time study, standardization, goal setting, money as a motivator, scientific selection, and rest pauses have been accepted to be fairly accurate. His work-study method helped increase productivity by applying the principle of scientific management. In his famous work, The Principles of Scientific Management, published in the year 1911, Taylor says that the approach to management should be science, not rule of the thumb, harmony, not discord, cooperation, not individualism, maximum output in place of restricted output, and the development of each person to his or her greatest efficiency and prosperity. The human contribution is duly recognized here in his approach. The early pioneers in management and those specializing in the study of organization, as well as the scientific managers like Taylor, recognized the behavioral aspect of management. But it was the human relations movement which realized the importance of human beings at work and cast the spotlight on people and their relationships at work. The pioneering led in this direction was taken by Hawthorne studies. The illumination studies at the Hawthorne Works of Western Electric conducted in 1924 set the pace for human relations approach. The studies were an attempt to examine the relationship between light intensity on the shop floor of work sites and its impact on employee productivity. These studies used a test group and a control group. The test group in the beginning of the study showed no change in the output in proportion to the change in illumination. The control group without any change in illumination showed an increase in output by the same amount overall as the test group had. The test group in the beginning of the study showed no change in the output in proportion to the change in illumination. The control group without any change in illumination showed an increase in output by the same amount overall as the test group had. During later phases, the light was reduced to the dimness of moonlight, where the workers could barely see what they were doing, and yet, amazingly, the productivity increased. The researchers were obviously baffled with the outcome. There was some variable which was not constant and under control and which was directly responsible for the outcome. This obviously was the complex human variable. This was a revelation. A series of studies were conducted hereafter. Relay room studies tried to test specific variables such as length of a working day, rest pauses, and even method of payment. The results were identical to those of the illumination studies. The last phase of this study was the bank wiring room study. The bank wirers were put in a separate room. There were no experimental changes once the study had begun. An observer and an interviewer gathered data for study. The department's regular supervisors were used to maintain order. The outcome of the study was reverse of the relay room study. There was no continuous increase in productivity. The researchers realized that there was a restriction of productivity due to informal norms set by workers. The Hawthorne experiments provide interesting insights into the understanding of human behavior in organizations. The relay room workers showed an increase in productivity during the test phase because of their positive attitude. The bank wiring workers were not satisfied and were a disgruntled lot. We have already seen the historical foundation of OB from the perspective of management. Now, let us look at behavioral science's foundation of OB. The study of OB is incomplete without a working knowledge of behavioral sciences and their research methods. A behavioral science foundation lends organizational behavior a distinct credibility as against the simple human relations approach. Psychology, sociology, and anthropology, with their valuable body of knowledge and stringent research methods, have made a very significant contribution to the discipline of OB. The Indian cultural context is unique. In an overpopulated country, jobs cannot be changed easily, and employees have limited job mobility. We reverse age and experience and disregard merited times. Often organizations do not have systematic appraisal systems. We perhaps have more family-managed business than any other country. Our productivity index and labor statistics of wasted man-hours speaks of our indolent work attitude. Despite these issues of concern, professional management with its golden threshold for high-quality enterprise have arrived with the LPG mantra. The fact remains that an average Indian worker today is more educated and enlightened than his predecessor. When Manmohan Singh designed the much talked about liberalization policy, a nation that believed in protectionism and license Raj suddenly arose to welcome international competition. So where were we going in the post-liberalized India? Let us find out. Until liberalization happened, Indian industries had a safe day. But with liberalization, the scenario has changed drastically. Like everything else, work relationships are changing. Employers are no longer tolerant of indolent workers, and workers no longer want to serve organizations for n number of years. Workers want participatory management practices. They want a say in decision-making processes. Remuneration packages are getting more and more lucrative, and employees are becoming more and more innovative in their design of compensation packages. Multitasking is common, and learning organizations are inevitable. The average Indian employee is shredding the garb of loyalty for better prospects, and the average employer wants quality work for competitive compensation. Work relationships are fast changing with empowered employees and volatile equations. This has certainly affected the way in which corporate organizations work in this country. Organizations in the post-liberalized era have undergone many changes. Flatter organizations, sans hierarchies, are emerging. Flexible operating relationships are gaining importance in these organizations. Employee participation in crucial areas of decision-making is also assuming importance. An average Indian organization is becoming a professionally managed competitive entity. The so-called family-managed businesses are also turning into professionally managed businesses. Superior subordinate relationships are undergoing a tremendous change. Employees are getting more and more interested in self-development opportunities. Retaining a good employee is becoming more and more difficult. Competition from international companies have unleashed a strong wave of competition. Gone are the days of aggressive unionism. Multinational with their tech-savvy approach have forced their Indian counterparts into using high-end technology. As a result, opportunities are diminishing in one area and emerging in another. The IT revolution has resulted in a new profile for an Indian employee. An uppity techie who earns very well, works crazy hours, is very young, and is extremely mobile. The good old Indian corporate culture is still alive in some form or another, where an employee in his early 50s is sticking to his job of the past 30 years in a solid Tata company. Obviously, against this backdrop, the study of OB holds its own charm. because more than any other discipline, perhaps this discipline holds the key to all the major poses.